So I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the following. The hearing will be filmed and streamed live. The recording and transcript will be published afterwards on the States Assembly website, and all electronic devices, including mobile phones, should be switched to silent. So I'm Deputy Catherine Curtis, the chair of the panel.
I'm Deputy Helen Miles, I'm a member of the panel.
Deputy Rob Ward, Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning.
I'm Keith Posner, the Interim Chief Officer in SIPES.
Anne Homer, Head of Finance Business Partnering for SIPES.
Jonathan Williams, Programme Director for SIPES.
Okay, thank you everyone. We just have 45 minutes for this hearing, so we'd need to try and keep the questions and answers brief. So to begin, Minister, please can you confirm if there were any challenging decisions to be made as part of the drafting of the proposed education and lifelong learning budget for 2026?
Yeah, there were always challenging decisions, there's no doubt. In terms of challenging decisions, I think it's more about making our priorities, to be quite frank, because we want to prioritise the three areas of CSP, which I won't go through again because we talked about yesterday, and that means that perhaps other things aren't seen as being prioritised, but they're business as usual with a drive to try and get as much done as possible. Keith, I don't know if you've got anything that you think was most challenging, because I know you were sort of front line of a lot of the discussions as well.
But also if there's any bids for funding which were rejected, if you could mention those.
I don't think there were,
No.
because of the focus that we had on the CSP.
I think it's probably just fair to say that we have spent a huge amount of time this year looking at our finances, particularly with schools, and we continue that work into 2026 to ensure that we can support schools as best as they can to manage within their budgets that they have available. So that hasn't been a request for additional funding. That's been about how we manage our finances internally within the business. That's been quite a challenge.
So there's been a focus on
There's been a
managing.
significant focus just in terms of the governance arrangements about how we spend money, how we support schools, about the information that we provide to schools for them to be making decisions for the budgets that they manage. So that has been challenging throughout the year, but absolutely necessary step because we want to make sure that we are as effective as possible with our funding.
Okay, thanks. Actually, my next question is about savings. We see that there's savings of 1.2 million due in 2026 through office and roles. So please could you outline how these proposed savings will be made?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is they're not frontline roles. There will not be staff in schools. There won't be staff on the front line delivering our services, and the vast majority of our money goes to direct delivery of services we were talking about earlier, actually, outside of this room. So it wouldn't be those. So this is about, if you like, looking at what roles perhaps won't be replaced in other areas in order that we can make savings without affecting the services we provide. I don't know if you want to add to that as well, but that's the way I see those savings.
And that's absolutely correct, Minister. We're looking at around 12 posts next year that we need to find internally. As the Minister says, these won't be frontline posts. We have the opportunity through reorganisation in the centre, which we're actively looking at. I think we've mentioned to you before the relationship between schools and the relationship between the department, and as roles come up, as people leave the organisation or move to other roles within the organisation, and we absolutely focus in on those roles to see if they're going to be needed going forward. If we think we can reorganise ourselves to absorb those roles, then we will, and that's been how we've looked at through 2025, and we'll carry on into 2026 doing that.
So,
And I think just that piece of work, just to say, that piece of work that's going on with the centre and schools, and that direct, very direct relationship, I think is going to enable a clearer picture of where there, there can be those savings if possible. I also think we'll have a better working relationship, and I think that's a really positive thing for schools in the end.
can you say what area those roles are likely to be absorbed, or is it in different areas?
I can't.
No, not for next year, but they will be central roles across the central services that currently support the back office and support some delivery of services. But it's as opportunities arise, we will be looking at whether we fill those posts, because as quite a large organisation, we do have a turnover in staff. So as they come around, we will focus in on those services.
Okay. Actually, on the subject of staff, from the details about education and lifelong learning full-time equivalent employees in the annex to the budget, we note that in comparison to last year's figures, there's been a growth of 68.1 across the department. Please, could you describe the reasons for that change?
There was, and do you want this?
Showed you that?
Yeah, because you have explained this to me on a number of occasions, and I have, but I think it might be better coming directly from you.
So across the department as a whole, we have gained 23 posts, which are about the growth scheme in PPA. But this piece that you asked directly about the Office of the Chief Officer is the legacy piece. Do you remember last year we split into two heads of expenditure?
Yeah.
And we did it at haste and slightly mucked it up. We made the correction with the money, but we had the libraries and some of the commissioning roles on the one side. So in the Office of the Chief Officer, which was a question that I think you asked directly, we've removed 3 posts completely across the two heads of expenditure, but 53 of them we've just made a correction and moved them from out of CNF into ELL to reunite them with the money. They just got missed in that.
Could you?
Can I just say CNF? I was just going to say
children and families.
Yeah, just for anyone.
I'm so
education.
sorry. The old Minister for Children and Education's ministry was split into 2 ministries: children and families, education and lifelong learning. We're here today at education and lifelong learning. When the split occurred in 25, we got some things the wrong side of that split. And then we corrected the money, and this is the last piece of the correction to make the permitted FTEs catch up with them. So 53 of that movement, they're not extra people, we're just moving them out of children and families and into education and lifelong learning so that they're reunited with the funding. So I'm sorry for that confusion. Hopefully we've got to the end of it now and I won't be saying something about this split in 27.
I think it was the right choice to get you to explain that answer.
Just that you said, so 53 of that number is not extra people, but some of them are extra people, just quickly.
So not of the 53, out of that
Some
Office
of them
of the
above
Chief
that.
Officer, in education, you'll see a net.
Because, sorry, you mentioned 23 post growth. That's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
So when we look at our growth schemes, we've got 1.8 million's worth for giving everybody an extra hour of protected preparation and admin time.
Right,
And to do that, there needs to be more teachers in the pot.
yeah.
So when we answered your question about the 53, the question was literally about the Office of the Chief Officer. But when you look at the situation for the ministry as a whole, there are some additional posts, and there were 3 or 4 posts that got transferred out as well to health and the net
But again,
position.
they are frontline posts.
They're frontline
to help
teachers.
Delivery of service.
It's just good to get the explanation.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. It's got quite a few questions about capital projects, please. Could you describe the need for the major project for the new secondary school at Montalabbey?
Describe the...
The need and the demand for the new school at Montalabbey?
Yes, there is absolutely a demand for the new school at Montalabbey. I think I've said before that I think as we go through that process now and as we look ahead, that demand may even be greater, and we have to look very carefully about what we're actually going to build. I know you've done some work. You've been away to look at some builds, which I think would be more appropriate now than perhaps we started with. Would you like to explain those numbers?
Sorry, I don't want to give you the wrong figures either. I think I'd need to follow up to show you our planned growth in numbers, but they're significantly rising at the moment.
Okay.
And that's why we do need to increase the size of the secondary school, because the secondary school, as is at the moment on the Hope Valley site, just simply isn't large enough. And then we've looked at the combined growth across the primary and secondary sites schools as they will be in the future and being on the same site. And I'll be able to confirm with you what we anticipate that overall number to be. We have done all that planning.
Because the current, sorry,
400,000 budgeted for 2026 for the new secondary school. How is that funding going to be utilised in 2026?
that's undertaking the feasibility and indicative designs for the school, following a recent visit to similar schools in the UK to review size, use of space and the service within the schools is the sentence that I read carefully, because that's precisely what we need to do. And I do think that we have seen, with the increasing need, we need to look really carefully at what we're going to build there. So this is a good step now. And after that, the money is, in 27, now ingrained, is the phrase, in the government plan to get that build done.
Okay. What's the timescale then, the anticipated timescale for kind of getting the project planning stage and then building stage?
So we would want to be so next year, leading into 27, we'll be working the scheme up through planning. So we would want planning permission to be granted in early 2027 or towards mid-2027. So because we have money available in 27 to actually start some of the build.
Okay, because the budget says that there's potential for the project to be accelerated. How will that affect the budget projections?
So that's going to be a conversation that we'll have with the Treasury. So we have access to the 400,000 that's earmarked in the government plan. There's also the potential for more money through feasibility, through the general feasibility pot.
Okay.
And if we're able to, really push these plans forward, we will be asking whether we can pull in from and these are the conversations that we have to have compared to other projects within the wider government's capital programme. And if there is funding and we have the capacity to do that, with our partners obviously in JPH, then we'll be making that case.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's really important to say, because in the planning process, we all know about the planning process. I don't see how this should be so difficult, given it is a piece of land that we will have. So therefore I'm hoping, and I would be hopeful, but then as soon as you say that, it doesn't happen. So but we will try to accelerate that project as quickly as we can, with also the proviso that we are also looking at what that project will be, because there is increasing need. So from, what could be seen as not as quick as we wanted, there could be something good that comes at the end of
More
it.
quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. The name sponsoring department for the Lascay project is Education and Lifelong Learning, and we were just a bit confused why that wasn't with the other youth projects, which come under children and families.
I thought it was.
Should be.
It should be, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that an oversight then?
I think that's a question for
Okay.
the
And
Minister for Children.
Yeah, what good spot. The other thing is as well, I don't know if it's partly as well because of the Skye School, some of the improvements there.
Yeah, there absolutely. We have. I think you may ask questions later on about our improvements to schools pot. That there are improvements to be done in Sunray School, but that is
Maybe
linked
that's
to that. But it's not linked to that
to the
line.
actual
So,
youth project.
so maybe there was a
Okay,
confusion.
thank
So
you.
sorry.
Within the major refurbishments and upgrades funding, there's funding for fire safety in the Sipes estate. And can you describe where that funding is going to be required?
It's across the estate, isn't it?
It will be. I would have to provide you with the detail of where that will be, but we have a whole programme outlined for 2026, which JPH are leading on and supported by officers within Sipes. So I'd need to provide you that detail.
Thank
But
you.
there will be a number of schools where work is going on, particularly, for example, around fire doors. That's a big project at the moment that's happening. So we can give you that detail.
And there's nothing put in the budget for beyond 2026 for fire safety. So is the assumption that everything will be done in 2026?
I mean, there has to be an end point, and we would hope that from the reports that we have now that we would have covered all of that work. I mean, I have to shoehorn in, if I may, that the quicker we build the new facilities, the more money we will save on these fire risks. And that is a reality, because modern schools built to higher standards are future-proofed in terms of those standards.
And can you describe the working relationship that you've got with Jersey Property Holdings and IHE to actually deliver these fire safety improvements?
I think it's actually been very good. I think everybody's looked at it and thought, this is a huge task that's come forward. We've got to get on with it. The work has been going on at a pace. I think whenever you do work in schools, it's challenging because the school is children don't care whether you're trying to do work, they're trying to get on with their day. So there was all...
There was a list of some that had already been done.
Yeah.
Or in process, so maybe an update.
So we do have a number
Two
of
A4
things.
pages.
So we do, yeah, I mean, for example, I can just go over. We have a number
Two
of
A4
things.
pages.
So we do, yeah, I mean, for example, I can just go over some of them, but probably send you, there's going to be work on heating systems, there's going to be work on internal fabric within buildings, there's going to be some...
I think vents and cooling, for example.
There's some work on skylights, on building, on the roofs. There's just a huge...
General maintenance.
which all adds up to the value of the spend, the predicted spend for next year.
Again, no further funding is put in for maintenance beyond 2026. So is there a long-term plan for the site?
Yeah, and I think one of the problems we have with these sites is as they age, they do continually degrade, is the phrase. A lot of the mitigation that's going on there will deal with things long into the future, and we hope there will be a lot less degradation that needs to be affected in that way. I think personally as well, we need to really genuinely look at a new build, and there is some genuine prospect of that coming forward. And I think, again, when we look at that, the savings made in this sort of repair need to be taken into account in those costings because they will be significant, plus the improvement in facilities. But beyond 2027, we're hoping we get Highlands to a stage where it is in a much better place, let's put it that way, and that those costs will not be as high.
Yeah. Given the priority in the CSP for lifelong learning,
Yeah.
why has no sort of feasibility work for the future of Highlands been put into the government plan?
I think it's because that's more in part the investment in Jersey project, and I think there's a delicacy, that's the wrong word, to say, okay, let's look at that project in the whole and see what we can do. To put it into the government plan, I think would not be the right thing to do because it is a major project. I would also say as well, just to talk about Highlands into the future, if we get to a point where those repairs are made and a significant amount of money is being spent, then the other repairs really would be business as usual within the repairs funding that we have across our estate. And because so much work is going on with fire mitigation, etc., I hope we can get to a point where our estate is much improved and therefore it costs less into the future. In terms of where Highlands is, Highlands does function. It does very, very well. It does provide every single day. And I don't want to work in that world of absolutes to say it won't do anything. It will. And so I don't think there is the major risk of it not functioning in the way that perhaps has been talked about. But I understand that being talked about because you want to push for a new campus completely, If I was in charge of that college alone, I would do the same.
Is there any idea about how much that feasibility work would cost?
Feasibility work of
on the
Highlands as it
College
is now?
estate? Yeah.
No, I can't give you a figure today.
No, that's fine.
But I would want to look at the feasibility of a new build as well and combine those
A
two.
new build elsewhere?
Yes, I think so. I think there, and that, well, the word feasibility is key there.
Yes.
Is it feasible? Will it work? What would be the advantages? If they are advantages, then we need to be brave and say, this is why we're doing this.
So no feasibility for 2026, any feasibility stuff would come in 2027.
Yes, sorry,
so
yes.
again, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you confirm the projected timescale for the Gas Place site acquisition and the development
Well,
now that the proposition is...
Now we've got through the States Assembly debates, the Gas Place, hang on a sec, I would suggest, the first thing is obtaining the land, which I believe will be soon, which is a step forward. Then we've got money this year for feasibility.
We have money out of the main feasibility pot, but we have it's build money coming in 2028.
Yeah, so the build in 2028. And that has been delayed further, and it's a real shame that it has. And I look back in the debate, is what I would say. I really hope that we can move forward with that project. And can I just say, and the real key thing about that is the fact that it is a community facility. It's the first time we've had the opportunity to build a facility from day one is there to serve the community as well. Because when we go to our other schools and we're going through a process of trying to open them up for sports facilities and community facilities, the challenges we face are they function as a school and they weren't designed for that. This is the design for that. So now, if any other large projects elsewhere don't happen, I'm more than happy to get on with it as quickly as possible.
Can I just ask why there's nothing in the budget for 2027, assuming the feasibility is done 2026?
So this will be just a kind of availability of money across the whole of the capital fund, but also looking at the capacity of officers who work on this. So we obviously have Montalabe, which was seen as a priority because we need to get Montalabe built, and then following just after that will be Gas Place.
Okay, so at what point do you think the Gas Place School will move into kind of major project stage?
Well, in 2028, in terms of when the construction starts.
Okay, so there's still quite a way
Yes,
to go.
So there is a way to go, yes.
Yeah, okay, it's quite disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it is, and it's significantly disappointing for me, seeing as it was, we had this opportunity 5 years ago, I think. However, I will say, I think one of the approaches we've taken in the department and across government is to have a reality check in terms of what's actually feasible. Let's get on with things that we can get on with. That's why we've got the Pastoral Secondary, which should be available in the early new year. There was some pushbacks in terms of what was found in the building that have to be dealt with. It was inevitable. So that's working. We could get that done. We got on and done it. I mean, these are plans. Okay, if we can speed up any of these plans, I would support that.
Okay, thank you.
And if we can do that and show the benefit of that, obviously as an education minister, any education minister would surely say, yes, get on with it.
Thank you.
So,
If the budget's approved, you're going to receive £3.8 million described as upgrades to Cyprus Estates in 2026. It says the majority of that 3 million is school improvements. Can you just give us an indication of what that particular funding is going to deliver?
there's a whole list. We can send you a list of those things. So it ranges. So I'll give you a range of things from aircon replacement that is happening to outdoor works on nurseries to cookery facilities to fencing, which seems to be extraordinarily expensive, but I won't say that publicly.
So it's going to be kind of the minor capital stuff,
Yeah.
is it? So,
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do, just so that the panel are aware, we do a huge amount of work in terms of identifying where risk is, and we have a criteria for, because we get a lot of requests in from schools, and then we have to score those, and then we end up with a priority list, and then we look at our funding. So we have identified the projects for next year, and it's the same process as we went through for this year, and we'll be able to deliver.
and that funding is over and above the funding that's been put in for the fire safety
Yes,
improvements? Totally separate budget
that's
lines.
totally separate. And we
Thank
also
you.
have the asset improvement fund as well, which is done on the same basis of risk and scoring criteria.
So we've got
I've got a
another...
list of 32 projects. Yeah, I won't read them all out because we're limited, but yeah.
Yeah, and another line in the budget provides for 300,000 for discrimination, disability and accessibility works.
Yes, that's right.
Can you just explain some of that, how that's going to be spent?
So again, we will be looking at, so some of this will be badged, although the Minister mentioned in the other pot, fencing often gets put in there, PAC systems within schools.
Sorry, what's a PAC system?
They're like security systems, fob
Oh,
systems,
okay.
so going sort of alarms, upgrades to toilets to make them more accessible. We are replacing ball courts and fencing for outside play areas because they're trip hazards, so we're trying to keep them safe. There are a nature garden upgrade for one of the schools, which is related to the additional resource provision there as well. Okay. So again, it's a similar process that we go through, and we're able to use those funds specifically for these.
One thing we've noted is that in the 2024 to 2027 government plan, the budget was much higher. It was over double, actually. It was 700,000. So it's been reduced last year, reduced this year. Any particular reasons for that?
I'm not sure if, because previously it may have included some of the fire mitigation stuff that was taken out separately. I think we need to check that and get back to you, because I think there was...
It just sounds like a heck of a drop.
Yeah, well, the fire mitigation became such a large project.
Yeah.
It was taken out separately, and I think that's the right thing to do. But yes, we can get back to you to check that. It also means that I think there were also some specific works that were completed that were expensive. from memory, looking back at that. Some projects that were particularly expensive, and I can't remember what it was now. I know you've talked to me about it, but we can get back to you and let you know about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay, so I now have some questions about the 2 to 3 year olds.
Yeah.
nursery. So, Minister, the budget indicates that the government will fund 15 hours of childcare for all children aged 2 to 3 from 2026 onwards, and 3 million has been budgeted for both 26 and 27, and then the funding changes to 1.8 million in 28. Why has the funding been reduced after 2 years?
Jonathan, do you want to, because you can give a very concise answer to that.
Of course, the Minister had from budget 25-28 a contribution towards 2 to 3, and that was going to be added to in the proposed budget in 26 to 29. So that simply reflects that there was an increase in pre-approved budget from a former period in those years to which this 26-29 budget adds.
Because the total amount is 7 million, not just the 3 million. There's money that's already there. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
it basically is a significant amount of money, and
Yeah.
it's the first time it's there.
In summary terms, over the 4-year period, approximately 18 million is going to be invested in that scheme, of which 8.5 is pre-approved from previous budgets, and just under 10, about 9.7, is contained in budget 26-29 proposals. So it's a combination of those two.
Okay, I see. So about 18 million in total then.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And how many children does the government anticipate will benefit from this offer?
Good question. So, the numbers in terms of the 2 to 3 year olds. Do you have those numbers?
Yes.
I have a number of them. I think
So
I'm wildly
perhaps it's
out.
helpful to understand first of all the source. So we take our projections from Statistics Jersey, so we have a single source we're using.
Yeah.
There are around 700 to 720 families we think that might be able to be benefiting. Of course, the comparisons of cohorts aren't direct because we're not looking at birthdays, and the 2 to 3 offer is effectively the 12 months prior to the nursery education fund, so it's not on your second birthday, it's in the year that you're turning 3. So there's some little nuances in there, but broadly speaking, around 720 families that might be able to benefit from this. We're anticipating in the first year between 80 and 85% of those will probably be wanting to participate, and then the business case steps up to 90% thereafter. So that's roughly the number. The other insight we have, the Minister was able to benefit from, is we conduct, I think, as you know, a survey in Q4 from providers, and the indication in Q4 of last year, which is our most recent survey, is that somewhere around 700 children were already booked in with nursery settings or childminders. What we don't know, to be extreme, is was that booking for an hour? Or was that booking for 50 hours? So we don't know the extent to which the child that was booked was enjoying something around about the 15 hours, many more, many less, but there's an indication for planning purposes. So 720, of which we're anticipating around 80-85% might want to participate in year 1.
So how did you get that figure of 700 families?
So the figure of 700 comes from the provider response survey. So we go out to providers, we ask a number of questions around workforce, around compensation, around capacity, both used and unused. And if we sum up the amount of booked places, I think for 2 to 3 year olds from nurseries and from childminders, the cohort group involved in the Minister's plans, that's around 700. So that's how we got that figure. But again, we're treating all of these things cautiously. That's a survey response. That's not more in depth than that, but it helps us, for indicative purposes, plan for that expenditure.
Okay, my next question is just about the start date, really. So if this is approved, can you confirm if the administration of the additional funding, making payments to the nurseries and childminders, will be in place for the 1st of January?
I hope so. There is some work to be done. They're also looking at how we administer the new scheme in the most effective way. But even if, depending on how the funding model works, we would want to have something in place from January, even if it's, the worst case scenario, I think, is that there's a delay to payment. Yeah, but the provision is for the year. Yeah,
So
we had a phrase on that.
It's like a retrospect.
It's,
Room in terms of implementation.
but we will do absolutely everything possible to get that in place. But the whole year benefit, I think, is really important for families so they can plan for that year. Also, you know, if there are challenges in those first few months, we recognise that. But at least, you know, the money's there and we can start this.
Okay, so either it would be ready from the 1st of January or there would be retrospective
Yeah.
funding applied. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, and what messaging or communications will be made to parents about the timings?
I think over the next few weeks we'll have a much clearer picture as to where we are and the way the funding model will be, and then we'll start that communication. And of
Okay.
course we have, it's the wrong phrase to say, but a captive audience, because we know where the children are. I think it's 85% of them are already in nursery places, so we'll know how to get to them, which is, I think, a very good thing.
And so how will the government support nurseries in making the change?
Well, depending on the funding model we have, I mean, seeing as that 85% of children are already in a nursery place, it should not be insurmountable in any sort of way. It's about just getting the money into the right place at the right time. So that should be doable. We already have a structure with NEF, which is it's simply transferable, and we can move forward with that. So I think there are many ways in which we can do that. I mean, if there's a different model of funding that needs to be developed, we can do so quickly, and we will do so as quickly as possible.
All right, and for those parents who maybe don't have their child in nursery anymore, maybe they wouldn't be able to find a place for the hours they need. So would there be any help from the government to place match, or would that be left to the...
Yeah, I think we will always work with nurseries to try and help find the hours that people want. You know, this may not be perfect. We may, you know, families might say, okay, I didn't quite get the hours that I want, but you're still getting 15 hours of childcare paid for. And I think that's a really key point to put forward here. We'll do everything we can to try and support that with the team that we have that has a really good relationship with nurses, actually. And we're in there all the time, and with all of the providers. And yeah, and I think that's beneficial both to parents and to nurseries to match those hours that are available.
Okay.
And also some parents might be quite flexible. If they're going back to work and say, well, I can be flexible, get the hours that I want, and that will really help.
So what analysis, if any, has been undertaken of the potential wider economic impact of this funding? And what discussions have you had with the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development on this subject, or plan to have?
Well, within the department, the economy department have helped us work with the providers to come up with the rate, and I think that was a really important piece of work. I think it was important that it wasn't in SIPES, because if you feel like it's a separate department looking at the scheme and looking with people. So that is the most important thing. That's the practical thing. In terms of discussions with the Minister, we haven't had a lot of discussions on this, but I know he's supportive around COM, so we want to see it happening. He was happy with officers to be involved. And most of this has been at officer level, because this is about practicality of getting something to work. I, at a political level, will make sure that COM is agreeing with it, and I will do my utmost in the Assembly to get it agreed, hopefully. That's my role as much as anything. But then I have to work and trust the officers who know a great deal about this, particularly those in Keys and so on and so forth, who've got these good relationships to get this working. So I think there's been good communication. In terms of the economic impact, it is a difficult one, because it's not just about economic impact, it's about social impact, it's about well-being, it's about all of these other factors. But I personally believe there will be a positive economic impact of making this investment for people.
Okay, so there hasn't been any analysis of the economic impact.
What would you say there?
There-
Because
there-
I think there's not
Yeah, so
any, but
an economic impact analysis has been conducted as part of the government plan process and the budget process. So that reflects, for example, that one of the benefits of a universal scheme versus a targeted scheme is ease of access and clarity of eligibility. So that reflects the fact that there's an expectation that some of, and this is then in terms of the analysis, some of that money that's effectively saved by parents on a consequence provided by the Minister might then be spent in Jersey. That has benefits, therefore, in terms of GST. But the Minister didn't start with this being a policy to drive economic performance or participation. It's about the benefit to children and the benefit to parents, and then other aspects were knock-on benefits,
Just
indirect.
that we're asking about the economic impact at the moment. So was that work conducted by SIPES?
No, that was done by the economy team.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I did allude to that, but I didn't make it as clear as that, so thank you, Jonathan.
And are there any plans to discuss this with the economy team, either at ministerial level or at officer level?
Well, there's already been discussions at officer level, a great deal of discussions about the rate. When we had the meeting regards that, the economy department were along and we're working with them. I think this is about people doing the things that are relevant to them because they've got the best skills. So the economy department working out the rate and working out that possible economic impact is one thing, and then SIPES working on the actual delivery of this scheme is a big way. So yeah, we're not closed to any communication, and we would want that, but we don't want to sort of, have discussions that aren't necessary. I think it's a very supported scheme across council and ministers, and I think personally, and I hope across the assembly. So
Okay, so the panel understands that the sector still faces significant workforce pressures. So, is there any evidence to show that this provision will increase the pressure on the workforce?
The Minister's alluded to the fact that there will be most likely some increase in demand consequence of the new benefit, although evidence suggests that a lot of children are already in settings. So the consequence of that, of course, is that there might be some further workforce pressures. And the Minister has set officers the challenge to have a second iteration, a second go at the workforce plan. So whilst I've not had the opportunity to present back yet, we had, for example, a very constructive meeting with a very major local provider just last week, where they were giving us some experiences they face in their UK provision and how that might manifest positively in Jersey. So we're starting to share ideas about what might work and what might not work in Jersey based on experience in equivalent jurisdictions. But the idea is we have to have a plan back in front of the Minister on workforce development that considers qualifications, access to qualifications, the ability to move out of a parallel or equivalent role into a regulatory role in a context of counting for ratios. Well, that's part and parcel of one of the work streams under the CSP.
yeah, and also I would say flexibility in working. So if somebody wants to work 2 days, that to enable that. I don't think we enable that enough across our workforce, to be quite frank, in just about any sector. I mean, I've got no evidence to talk about other sectors, but I do feel that from what I've heard. There will be changes. I think the point where I've said, I said early on, we're not going to do this until we believe there's space available. Because there are up to about 85% already in nursery places, I think we're at a point where, well, if we don't do it now, and we're waiting for utter perfection, we'll never get anything done.
Okay.
And we've managed to win the argument over money, so let's get on and do as best we possibly can with this and support the sector.
And I think the last question I've got on this subject, the panel understands that there have been calls from the sector for more significant change to the funding model and approach. Can you tell us why that approach has not been taken, or why this particular one?
I'm not entirely sure what that approach is. I think in terms of I don't think we can convolute the rate, which I think is a very fair and very reasonable rate, which is above what most nurseries pay anyway, charge anyway, with other funding models. We can look at that. It may well be that nurseries may prefer us to pay directly to parents. We can talk to Social Security and look at a model for doing that. That's not a problem at all. But the NEF works. If we can get a system for 2 to 3 year olds that works and is as simple or even more simplified, I think there are some discussions to be had, but I really hope that nurseries can look at this positively, get on board with it, and then we can get on with the work as quickly as possible after, hopefully, this is agreed in the Assembly, and then we can move forward with this. And I think within a few months, we will see that this is incredibly beneficial to parents and to nurseries.
Thank you. I think that's
Again, just some questions around revenue expenditure growth and specifically teachers' terms and conditions. So additional 1.8 million per year for the next 4 years to fund changes to teachers' terms and conditions. Could you tell us why this change is required?
This came from the settlement over the dispute. So it was partly pay, which we settled very quickly, and the other part was terms and conditions. Terms and conditions discussions have been going on for years. I mean, so long that I can remember them. But this is the first time when we've actually said, okay, well, we will put a proportion of money towards actually providing the staffing to try and do something about contact time. Now, that's for extra staff. Also, as we go through the work with schools in terms of the way they're working together, more collaboration, we may be able to free up time there. But the really key principle is we are directing this money and those changes as much as anything into freeing up teachers to have the time to do their job. Because if you allow that, they're better at it. There's more will stay, more will commit to the profession longer term, can survive doing that. And we have a better workforce and we have a better education system. So this is the money that's linked to it. Could it be more? Of course it could be more, but we've never had anything before. And I think we've had these positive discussions with the trade unions as well, and that's a recognition of that.
I was going to say about feedback and consultation with teachers and other stakeholders about the change, but it sounds like there's been an ongoing
Yes,
piece of
absolutely.
work there.
And we will continue that dialogue. I think the dialogue with trade unions is very good. It's very open, very positive, and we genuinely appreciate that because it helps us have the difficult discussions.
And
at
have they
times.
indicated support for your proposals?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, absolutely. This has come out of the Terms and Conditions Working Group, which is a combination of officers centrally and union representatives that trying to create more time for teachers to plan as the job is becoming more and more complex. Is a good thing.
Thank you. Minister, the panel understands that there's no ring fence funding for the teaching of Gérier within the SIPES budget. Can you confirm why that is the case?
We have funding for...
So we have funding for Gérier, and I think your question...
There's no
about it
line in the
being
budget, it's no ring
Right,
fenced,
so
yeah.
that is correct. It is part of, we fund the service at an amount that we have done for a number of years now.
But we fund the teachers in Gérier are employed as on teachers' terms and conditions, so they're funded within the department to teach Gérier. I think there is always going being not a distinction, but a question of where are we looking in terms of the teaching, the physical teaching and other cultural areas, and we are having discussions with the economy department as to how we would best define that split and have some clarity on that funding. And I'm very open to that. Yeah.
Do you think that the budget and therefore the posts should continue to sit with SIPES, or do you think they'd be better sitting with the Sustainable Economic Development Department?
The one thing I would say is if you're under teachers' terms and conditions, then you should be with SIPES, because I think if you're going to be under teachers' terms and conditions, there's a lot that goes with that in terms of standards, quality, training, what is being delivered, assessment, accountability, etc., etc. If you don't have that, then I think we have to question as to what scale that people on do. Do teachers want to become civil servants? I'm not entirely sure they do. I think we can get that right in terms of what is the best model for that going forward. If there is clear evidence that the best model is to not stay in SIPES, I want to do whatever's best for that language going forward and that language. At this moment in time, I think teachers being within SIPES who are on teachers' terms and conditions, that makes sense. The clarity we need to have is the other work that isn't teaching. Where does that fit? Now, that might fit best in heritage, and we're having discussions about that and what proportion of money, therefore, will go to heritage and the best way to deliver that. But that's, I think, it's not clarity of purpose, it's like a division of labour. Yeah.
So would you envisage a situation whereby the budget for heritage language sits within the school's formula, the school's funding formula?
That would be really difficult because the funding formula has so many other features to it. But it's an interesting idea.
So I don't necessarily think the money in the formula, that may be complicated. However, looking at where the service is best led and where it can flourish at its most is part of what we're looking at across the whole
part
of
of
the
the new
service
strategy.
at the
Yeah,
moment.
exactly.
But we have a Gérier service that we're committed to, and as the Minister says, we're looking at that kind of community teaching areas at the moment and who's best to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're just about out of time, but if I can ask just a couple of quick questions, would be good, and then we send the rest to you in written, if that's okay. Just a question about the school meals programme, which has been rolled out very successfully, it seems. But we see that there's no funding proposed for 2029 and wondered if there would be changes to the funding in the future. And considering, I'm thinking about the staffing as well, because there's a difference between Appetito and Caring Cooks and the way they
There
work.
is funding for 2020.
So in 20, do you mean in terms of growth funding or actually money in base budget?
Well,
Because
how
the
it's
money,
done,
the money
really.
will be in base budget in 2029.
Okay, so are there any plans to alter the way it's funded going over the next few years?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
And you've got to remember as well that I don't know when the numbers start to decrease a little. So base funding, if we keep that base funding, can meet that. If you're talking about extending it to free for everybody, I
No,
think
no, I
that's
was just generally wondering about
Oh, yeah.
any
So the
changes to how
funding's
it's done.
consistent over time.
Yeah.
I think those models we've modelled really well, and I think the work that's gone on so far, we can maintain that project.
Yeah, because there's a difference in how many staff are needed as well, according to which operator it is. isn't
Yeah,
it? So,
yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, just my last question then, or our last question, is to conclude the hearing. Minister, could you confirm if there are any other highlights that we've not covered?
Highlights.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, personally, I would say, you know, getting money for new projects is always challenging, but we have got, I'm very, very pleased that we have, I know we've already talked about it, but I don't think we've emphasised it enough, that we actually have, I mean, I'm obviously pleased with the 2 to 3 year olds. We really desperately want to get that to work. And I have to say the officers are taking a lot of pressure from me in terms of the speed and pushing it forward. And I think they've done remarkable jobs. They really have. But I'm very pleased with the actual tangible money, and I'm sure there could be more, could always be more, for the teachers' terms and conditions piece. Because that workforce is so vital for us as an island.
Yeah.
But supporting them in that way and having tangible amounts there means that I think we can start to say there's a genuine value there. We can start to address those terms and conditions and hours and time to actually do the job. That is, I think it's more important that let me put it this way, it's a bit of a boring one for many people, but it's absolutely vital.
Well, it was one of the recommendations from this panel
Yes,
in our
absolutely.
secondary education funding review. About
Yes, well,
extra
absolutely,
time.
and we can. It's always nice to agree with the panel. So we finished there.
Yes, okay, we've finished, I think. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.